right, good morning. Welcome to Inside Pages on the Metro Television. Thank you very much for choosing this channel, and thank you very much for choosing Inside Pages. Now, Inside Pages this morning is going to try and figure out how the economy for 2024 is going to look like, because we ought to be able to, how do you call it, come up with our own budget for personal budget, and also for our businesses. That's if you're running a business. You ought to know how the economy is going to fare, how the economy is going to look like in 2024, of course, based on some decisions and policy decisions and things that the government has actually made in 2023. That's very important, And also, the power sector. What are we likely to see in 2024? We've already started experiencing some power trips here and there, where you can call it doomsaw. We want to know whether we're going to get out of the woods, whether this power crisis is going to be over, or we should brace up for these intermittent power outages that we keep experiencing from time to time. So that promises to be a very interesting conversation. When I'm joined by Professor Bokping of the University of Ghana Business School. He lectures in finance and economics. He has very interesting stuff to share with us as far as the economy is concerned. And also, but before we do that, the NDC, the biggest opposition party, the NDC has been holding a press conference. In fact, I can call it this actually the beginning, the first press conference for 2024, where the party is already sending a strong warning to the Electoral Commission and the government that it will not countenance any acts that would make it difficult for the party to win the 2024 elections. Because as far as the NDC is concerned, the 2024 elections is for the party to lose, and that all its internal research that it has conducted shows that the NDC will win the 2024 elections with a fantastic majority in parliament, and nothing, according to the party, absolutely nothing will stop the party from attaining this aspiration. But the party has also been expressing some concerns about the posture of the Electoral Commission and some, you can call it policies that the Electoral Commission has been throwing out there, which the Electoral Commission says it is under consideration. We'll be we'll be hosting the Deputy General Secretary of the party this morning on Inside Pages. Stay tuned in. I will be right back. My name is Audu Moro.
An indicator shows the NDC will win the 2024 elections. Beyond the polls published by pollsters, our series of internal research consistently points to a one-third victory for John Dramani Mahama with a convincing working majority in Parliament. However, we are not complacent, because polls alone do not confer victory on the political party in elections. Moreover, it's being said that those who vote decide nothing, but those who count the votes decide everything. We are conscious of the fact that our opponents who control the state machinery do not believe in fairness at all. That is why we are assuring Ghanaians that we will not rest. We will not tire, and we will not falter. We will not relent until every vote is cast, every vote is counted, and every vote is made to count by the Jim Mensah-led Electoral Commission. We will not rest until we ensure every single Ghanaian is protected. The dastardly murder of 8 Ghanaians to make Akufo-Addo president in 2020 must not be repeated in 2024. The blood of the murdered 8 shall remain a stain on the Akufo-Addo Bawumia's second term record forever. Instead of President Akufo-Addo demanding congratulations from President John Dramani Mahama, as we are picking from the media, we suggest that he must listen to his predecessor when he says he's the only person who has a predecessor who will become his successor. When President Mahama says the use of thugs and rogue elements within the security agencies to disrupt elections in some parts of the country as occurred in 2020 elections, leading to the loss of 8 lives, will forever be remembered as Ghana's day of infamy, unquote. Nana Addo must also take a cue from Mr. Mahama when he adds that it is unconscionable that 3 years after these tragic events, President Nana Akufo-Addo has not uttered even a word of sympathy to the bereaved families. Ladies and gentlemen, Nana Akufo-Addo should rather be implementing the recommendations of the Commission of Inquiry, which he himself set up. We believe that those who are planning to come to our offices to invite us to participate in activities geared towards peaceful elections, signing of memoranda, and all that, the time is now.
The Electoral Commission on December 18, 2023 announced at a press conference that it will no longer use indelible inks in any elections going forward. According to the EC chair, the use of biometric verification system is sufficient in preventing double voting.
The question is, when we were not doing biometric, we were basically using your face, your card, and to look at you. We look at your face and we say, this picture looks like you. The biometric technology makes it difficult for a person who has been verified and cast their vote to come a second time. So there is no need for indelible ink, because once you have been verified, it goes into the system and you cannot come back a second.
However, the minority in Parliament opposed the decision. Member of Parliament for South Dai constituency, Roxton Nelson Dafiamekpo, explained on the floor of the House that the EC's decision breaches the law.
Mr. Speaker, the issue of the non-use of the indelible ink breaches the law. Mr. Speaker, let me refer the House to Article 51 of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, with your leave, let me read. The Electoral Commission shall, by constitutional instrument, make regulations for the effective performance. Mr. Speaker, the controlling phrase there is for the effective performance of its functions under the Constitution or any other law, and in particular for the registration of voters, the conduct of public elections and referenda, including provision for voting by proxy. So, Mr. Speaker, you cannot come to Parliament with an instrument where protocols have been clearly outlined in the instrument, and you, by an administrative fiat, decide that you will go according to the protocol. Mr. Speaker, the use of indelible ink It's part of the regulations that we put in the instrument for the effective performance of the Electoral Commissioner.
For the Member of Parliament for Banda and Deputy Minority Whip Ahmed Ibrahim, Parliament must be careful to pass regulation on which independent institutions like the EC will take decisions.
Discontinuation of indelible ink. Mr. Speaker, we are together in this. The point of the discontinuation of the indelible ink was raised by the majority leader himself. And he had a serious concern that if you don't use proper indelible ink, you are going to lead, it is going to lead into some kind of unwanted chaos that you did not intend to. And therefore, we must make sure that we are able to procure a proper lasting indelible ink for voters to go through and cast their voters well. But Mr. Speaker, it was said just 2 days to the organization of the district level elections. And that is why when we said it, the chairperson of the Electoral Commission said, yes, she had taken it in good note, but it was too late. So I know, after adopting this report and approving their budget, when we are going to 2024 general elections, that provision will be catered for.
Meanwhile,
all persons connected with the conduct of elections must be held strictly accountable for their actions by instituting a stringent regime of punishment for willful wrongdoing. All categories of election workers must be familiarized with the applicable regime of sanctions during their training, and any infractions must be seen to be punished. It appears that some candidates rush to court with election petitions alleging manipulation of results, primarily to placate their financiers and supporters so that they will be given another chance to be a candidate the next time. The rush can cause undeserved injury to the reputation of the Electoral Commission and unnecessary inundation of the courts. As we speak, there are well over 1,000 election petitions before the courts in Nigeria following the 2023 elections. That's well over 1,000 election petitions. Some of them will not be concluded before the next election itself. To prevent the rush to court with improbable election petitions from becoming a fashion, I suggest that election petitions that do not succeed should attract punitive sanctions. In view of the importance of the judicial function in elections, I wish to recommend collaboration between the judiciary and the Electoral Commission to institute a program of continuing education for judges on elections. Such a program will improve the delivery of electoral justice, which in turn will contribute to electoral accountability and the consolidation of our democracy.
Well, the tapes we've been playing you is actually to help us set the ball rolling for what promises to be a very interesting conversation this morning with the Deputy General Secretary of the NDC, Mustafa Foyo Bande, who has a lot to share with us as far as the NDC's preparedness for the 2024 elections are concerned. And then also all the other matters that have come up, the challenges they have with the Electoral Commission. There have been issues about the district assembly elections when the NDC said they've swept most of the, of course, the persons who won were known NDC persons, and they've won most of the seats. And then also issues about indelible link and so on and so forth. And so, Mustafa Bande, let me say a very good morning to you. And I want to thank you very much for making time to join us on Inside Pages.
Good morning.
Yeah, quite a number of issues to look at this morning, isn't it? But first of all, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm in a good shape.
Right.
I'm determined to focus on what is ahead of us, and that is 2024. And that is what I have been up and doing, up and about. I think that currently, as we speak, the country is ready for a change, and it requires that people put themselves in readiness for that change. And I think that it requires hard work, it requires commitment, it requires foresight, it requires collaboration. And as an officer of the party, that is what I believe fit within my mandate. And we've been up and about doing the same.
I noticed the thing about you personally is that you're not frontally involved in the politics. You I may be wrong, but you appear to want to work more behind the scenes. Of course, a few times we see you come into the public domain and make one or two statements, but is it about your style of politics, which is to do more of the groundwork?
Well, I don't know about that. I haven't done the assessments, but I believe that for me, I see a gap, and you must fit into that gap. And that gap is that we must work hard and be committed. We must keep the base, and we must get other people on board. I tend to think that our superiors, in terms of the other hierarchy, they have given their best to this party, served this party, and I believe as young people, when we are given privilege, we should be guided by hard work and commitment. And so if you don't work hard and you are holding a position, you are simply wasting time and also preventing other people. More, my belief is that the NDC is a destiny career, like just as any other political party. A lot of hopes depends on political parties. Whether you like it or not, we cannot have a church rising to be in charge of our governance. You can't have a mosque rising to be in charge of our governance. You would have political parties. And so when people vest hopes into political parties, officers of these parties must take these hopes very seriously and work hard. And so having been given the privilege to serve, I believe that 24/7, you must be up and doing what mandate you've been given. And for me, that is what it is. I have not been able to do an assessment of whether or not I'm doing a back door
or
work,
front door,
or I'm doing a front door. I'm sitting here upon your invitation to give information on behalf of the General Secretary and the party at large.
Right.
And that's what I'm here to do. I cannot tell whether that amount to
frontal politics or behind-the-scenes politics. I like that. But there's a certain feeling and there's a certain view that persons who are interested in the NDC politics, persons who are aligned to the NDC politics, so I talked about interested, they may not necessarily be NDC supporters, but they are persons who are, you can call them floating voters.
Yeah.
You know, they feel that the NDC is not showing sufficient hunger for power. When you compare the NDC to the MPP of 2016 and the posture of the MPP in 2016, when they made it seem as though that if the MPP does not win the 2016 elections, there was going to be Armageddon. And so there are some people who feel that it was actually part of the reasons why Ghanaians actually voted for change, because at some point Ghanaians were scared. And look, if we look at the way the MPP are talking and the way they are behaving, if we don't give this power to them, we may not have a peace of mind. There's some Ghanaians who feel they're not seeing that type of, that type of attitude and character in the NDC of 2024. I don't know whether you heard this, and what do you make of it? If you agree, is it a decision to do your politics like this, or there's something that's missing that you're trying to figure out?
Yeah, so thank you very much. We've heard a couple of these
sentiments
raised by individuals,
right?
But it doesn't reflect the larger opinion.
Right.
Now, the very reason why today, as we sit down, His Excellency Akufo-Addo is going home as one of the worst presidents to have ever happened to this country, and his regime would be tagged as one of the most corrupt regimes ever to have happened to our country, is because they came into power on wrong premise. A premise that we must force the systems, a premise that we must corrupt the systems, a premise that let's compromise the security structure. That is not the game plan of the NDC. The game plan of the NDC at every point in time have been that let us carry the nation along in the context of problem solving. And so if you check history, each time the NDC was in opposition and had to come to power, they came to power at the back of a solution. Here we are again. You don't need a prophet to tell you that these group of people, anything close to Akufo-Addo's name should not be allowed into governance of this country anytime soon. You don't need a prophet to tell you that. But you also know that all Ghanaians are looking up to a new set of people to bring solution. And when you are in the boardroom seeking for solution, analyzing problems, I don't think that you would want to go that way that the MPP came into 2024. If you look at what His Excellency John Dramani Mahama and party leadership is doing currently, they are touring across the country, first and foremost, to touch base with Ghanaians who are affected by the corruption, who are affected by incompetence, whose hopes are lost. We have regions where there are potentials that the government can tap in. His Excellency John Dramani Mahama is consulting with these people to say, okay, teach us how do we better your lives beyond 2025. Nurses, how do we better your lives beyond 2025? If you look at cocoa growing areas, currently as we speak, cocoa bodies collapsed. How do we revive it? How do we make that sector attractive again? How do we make our fathers, our mothers who are cocoa farmers, how do we make them happy? So the NDC is coming into power, inshallah, in 2024 December, at the back of problem-solving criteria. We don't have time to be like them. They came into power with hooliganism. They came into power with noise. They came into power with deceit. They came into power with dishonesty. Yet they don't have the brains to develop. They don't have the brains to solve the problems. Look, the highest social crime would be when you jump onto a podium and give the whole nation hope, knowing within yourself that it is not true, that it was all fraud. That is what Nana Addo led the MPP to do in the 2016. When they came here, and they said, oh, President Mahama have not done anything. We are coming to build. We're coming to manufacture. We're coming to produce. And when we come, we will do one village, one dam. Only for them to write it in the books, take loans for Hawa Kumsin and His Excellency Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia to fail the country. And moreover, one will ask you, have you properly analyzed the use of dams? If we have dams in this country, what that will be used for? Currently, we import onions, we import tomatoes. Dams could substitute some agricultural activities that can produce all of these things. It will provide money, it will substitute importation, it will rebuild the economy. All this was fraud. And that was led by His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo and His Excellency Dr. Mahmoud.
So what it means is that you don't agree with those who feel that the NDC is not hungry enough for power.
We are very hungry for power. But within the context of respecting the boundaries and the structures and pillars of this country. Let me tell you, as I sit here, there is no one in the MPP that I'm afraid of. And when you say you don't fear somebody, it should be within the context of wrong and right. Where are you wrong and where are you right? I'm sitting here and haven't offended anyone. If you come and you want to attack me, I can assure you that I'll attack you in multiples of your attempts. without regards to anything.
I see.
But given the context of where we find ourselves, knowing that the government machinery trying to stay onto power, even though the party is fragmented along the lines of failure, along the lines of disappointment, believing that politics of today is not about issues, it's not about campaign, it's not about meeting people and getting their vote, it's about stealing. I can assure you that the entire government machinery will regret for it if they make a wrong move come December 7th.
And you mean what you're saying?
I mean what I'm saying. The entire government machinery will regret it. Whoever leads that belief that they can steal will regret it.
Okay. Let's come to the issues that you raised in that presser that was addressed by the national chairman of your party, the Honorable Johnson Asiedu Nketia, where he starts to talk about the economy and, comes down to talk about the extra assembly elections, talks about indelible ink, talks about the closing time for, which are all policy proposals by the Electoral Commission, and so on and so forth. Now, what was it that you were attempting to communicate to Ghanaians with that press conference that the national chairman held? Why did you, in fact, that's actually the first press conference you've held in 2024. What's the strategy behind this? What are you trying to communicate to Ghanaians?
The essence of that,
presser,
that beautiful presser, issue-based presser addressed by the national chairman, Honorable Johnson Asiedu Nketia, was to inform Ghanaians about deception. One, to also expose a criminal scheme set up within government, imposed and being championed by the Electoral Commission ahead of 2024.
Do you have any evidence to this?
Yes, we have evidence. Now, that presser was to tell Ghanaians that beyond pollsters, the recent polls by
Global Info Analytics.
Global Info suggests that this government was almost exiting power, and that it suggests that the NDC was coming into power. The MPP says no. So we're to inform Ghanaians that beyond polls, the recent district assembly election conducted throughout the country exposed government. That as we speak today, the NDC can determine where we can have presiding members to champion the agenda of the local government system and can decide where we cannot. We are fully in control of the entire grassroots political base of this country. And they know that, and we know that. Figures will show. We have won overwhelming majority. Look, even in the hometown, the constituency of the local government minister, Dan Botwe. So I wasn't surprised that he's running out of parliament. And substituting a candidate will not solve the problem. That even the fact that you are a local government minister, at the time you were still a minister and an MP in Okre constituency, where the NDC have never taken majority in that constituency as far as assembly members are concerned. As we speak, he has about 21 electoral areas or so.
In Okre, you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
21 electoral areas. We've won 12.
Out of the 21?
Out of the 21. They have only 9.
Which is more than half.
Yes. Patrick Boama's constituency here, it used to be...
That's Okakwe Central.
Yes, it used to be 0 to 5. MPP had 5. NDC has 0. As we speak, we won 4. They won only 1. In the constituency of the chairman of the Council of State in Ashanti region, in his electoral area, the presiding member there lost to the NDC. So really you would know that Ghanaians have decided that we want a change. We do not want this criminality to continue. We do not want hot-headedness to continue in government. Government is about solving the problem of the people. It's about putting food on the table of Ghanaians. Every single Ghanaian's economy is in their pocket.
I see. Now, speaking about the district level elections, let me read to you what the chairman says. He says already, thousands of persons affiliated to the MPP have lost the district level elections.
Correct.
Yes, the MPP people have miserably lost the assembly and unit committee elections to members, supporters, and affiliates of the NDC. Sincere political watchers and analysts know this is another evidence when the government is on its way out of office.
Correct.
They know because even though the processes leading to the district level elections are non-partisan, most of the contestants and the voters are aware of where the candidates stand politically. Right. As an illustration, it says in Waliwali, in the Northeast region, which happens to be the constituency of the sitting vice president, the MPP flag bearer, NDC affiliates won the majority of the electoral areas. This can't be true. No, hold on. It says electoral areas 18 out of 31. In addition, in Okre, in the Eastern region, you mentioned that, where the Minister of Local Government doubles as their sitting member of parliament, the NDC members won the majority of assembly seats, 12 out of 21. Furthermore, in Esikado Ketan, in the Western region, a stronghold of the NPP, NDC members won majority of the electoral areas, 8 out of 12. Also in Ebura, Asebu, Kwamankese, that's where Felix Ofusu-Kwakye is standing. In the Central region, 24 out of 31. And in Hohoe, where the seat is legally held by the NPP with the connivance of the EC, in 2020, NDC had 12 out of 17. It was 2 out of 17 in 2019. Now, it says, attached at the regional and constituency breakdown of the results of the district, and it goes on and on and on and on. And it even goes to, in fact, it mentions, it says so Ashanti and Eastern regions were also very impressive for the NDC compared to 2019 performance. Presently, even though the Electoral Commission unexpectedly postponed voting in some electoral areas in these two strong regions of the ruling MPP, NDC members and affiliates secured 34.13% and 45.52% electoral areas in Ashanti and Eastern regions. And you're saying that this is an indicator of what will happen in 2024. Help us appreciate what the correlation is. I mean, if persons who are affiliated to a party sweep overwhelmingly district assembly elections, how does that affect electoral outcomes?
So if they disagree with polls, scientific research, they cannot deny. Practical example, if a vice president loses at his backyard and he's telling you that he wants to be a president, that is deception. Again, that press conference was to address the fallout as far as that election is concerned. Mind you, it was a national election. To the extent that the Electoral Commission would have to supervise that election and ensure its mandate within transparency, credibility, the freeness and fairness of that election. We witnessed a district assembly election where the Electoral Commission for the first time is saying that there are places that we have shortages of ballot papers. Shortages of ballot papers. We have places where there are errors, in fact, on the ballot papers that were printed. There are places where the voters' register that was printed were mixing figures, padded figures. We recorded that in Sunyani. There are places where Electoral Commission officials, temporal officials, were arrested trying to paddy votes, trying to, as it were, help perpetrate electoral fraud. Critical among the issues, for me, is when you have members of parliament being given military escort into the election. You have the Honorable Apenyo Makin, the MP for Ehutu, in Winneba, a supposed educated community, efficient community. You have him as a deputy majority leader. And Moro, you and I know that every member of parliament is well equipped with one police officer and a rifle and a sidearm. On that day, that 18th fateful day, Apenyo Markins was in his constituency with military officers fully armed with rifles. And I said this is a serious security infraction in an election because we have the police who have deployed police personnel across the country for the purposes of election duties. And in cases where the police have limited personnel, they have had to rely on other sister security agencies to deploy. And within that context, they were performing the duty of the police, and that is to police the election. Then a member of parliament and an appointee of the government comes into that election with the military armed with rifles. Is it what we are going to see in 2024? And as we speak, he has not been arrested. The Honorable Hawa Kumsen, Minister for Fisheries, MP for Ewutu Senya East, in her constituency, were hooligans wearing national security uniforms that they claimed responsibility of in Ayawaso West Wagon in pickups, escorted by the constituency youth organizer, intimidating polling stations to polling stations. What was that for? And so the press conference exposed this one. And again, exposed the fact that an electoral commission, if exercising some level of professionalism, you have your timetable for an election. You have planned. You've subcontracted to vendors, printing presses to print. Of course, we know that in the context of these assembly elections, some of the printing press in the regions can do it. It is your responsibility. You have announced day of election. 12 hours to that election, the Electoral Commission didn't know that there were errors with the ballots that were printed. For me, that is the highest mark of deliberate unprofessionalism without exercising due care. So the NDC is simply saying that the 2024 election is a critical election, that we do not expect the Electoral Commission to be making such errors in the immediate election preceding or leading to a general election. We expect that this assembly election should be a dress rehearsal for the Electoral Commission.
Right.
If we still have in cases where there are security infractions, shortage of ballot papers, that is a criminal, that's a fraud. That's a deliberate attempt to ensure that people are not able to vote. And of course, that was what happened.
Okay.
So the press conference was addressing this and pointing to the fact that the Electoral Commission is not doing that alone. The Electoral Commission is doing that with the endorsement of the sitting president and his political party, aiming to steal in the next election.
But how do you know that? How do you know the Electoral Commission is condoning and conniving
everything
with the sitting president and the vice president?
So if you have an Electoral Commission who comes to tell you without any cause that I'm reducing the number of officers who will man a particular polling station from 5 to 3.
Yeah.
Where one person will have to be issuing a ballot or checking your name. It led to cases where we had, even before the election, already printed ballot boxes, ballot papers, where Electoral Commission officers were issuing this to voters. And the vigilance of the voter or the voters led to the discovery of this. We have cases where the Electoral Commission comes to tell you that I'm going to remove ink system.
Yeah, but how does this roping the president and the vice president?
So
far, you've mentioned the Electoral Commission.
They have been the beneficiary of the rigging of 2020 election. Nana Akufo-Addo, President Nana Akufo-Addo.
Right.
Our president sitting today, he is enjoying a product of some alleged fraud, electoral fraud. We believe that the 2020 election was rigged. I know that. And so, having, experienced all these things, we are saying that the right things should be done.
Okay.
So Electoral Commission didn't have the power to just come up and say, I'm removing indelible ink, when the law suggests that a person who have voted should be marked and should be identified as having voted. She's talking about technology. For me, it either means the Electoral Commissioner is ignorant of the election process or she's deliberately trying to test the resolve of Ghanaians. Moro, in the verification system, the BVD machines the functionality of those machines is based on internet, right? So we have places where we record, slow network, and the machines wouldn't work.
Don't they have offline BVD machines?
Correct. So when that happens, we'll go to offline.
Yes.
We use the manual verification system.
Yes.
Under the manual verification system, you would have to get somebody through the manual system and the person goes to vote.
Right.
Here we are. We have places where the Electoral Commissioner has mixed data. And don't forget that we have not synchronized the National Voter Register such that if you vote in Accra, and you run to central region to go and vote,
it can be detected.
It cannot be detected. So when an electoral commissioner is making this argument, it is so shallow, so empty, so ignorant of our electoral process. But I say that she knows about it. She's deliberately testing the pulse of Ghanaians, packing and preparing a stage to rig the election in favor of the MPP. And that is what the chairman talks about. We going to resist.
Just in case you just joined us, I'm talking to the Deputy General Secretary of the NDC, Mustafa Gbande. He's here to talk to us about some concerns that the NDC has ahead of the 2024 elections. This is Inside Pages. It's your most authoritative news and current affairs analysis show on Saturdays. It starts at 8 and ends at 10. Remember that after this conversation, we'll also be looking into the crystal balls to find out how the 2024 economy is going to look like, because we need to be able to plan our budgets and so on and so forth. We need to know whether we should be tightening our seatbelts more, or we should be loosening it, or we should be sewing bigger trousers or smaller ones. We ought to be able to know all of that. And also what the power sector is likely to look like, again, in 2024, because we're already beginning to experience some power outages here and there. We've not been comfortable with that at all. The government says it resolved it, but there's some who are saying that, they're still, we're not totally out of the woods yet. And so there's a conversation to be had about the economy and the power sector. But for now, we're talking NDC matters. And in case you want to contribute to the program, it's 0249 155 646. 0249 155 646. 0249 155 646. So join the discussion with your comments and let me know what you think about some of the issues that Mustafa Gbande has raised. Now, I asked Mustafa Gbande about what he makes of the opinion that the NDC doesn't look that hungry for power. He has explained why the NDC has assumed this posture. And also, two, he's also talked about the fact that the NDC is prepared to protect your votes, because as the national chairman of the NDC himself said in that presser, elections are not, in fact, outcome of elections are not determined by the persons who vote, but the persons who count. And he says the NDC is ever ready to protect your vote if you do vote for the NDC. There's quite a number of issues that we'll be looking at before we start our conversation on the economy and the power sector. Now, Mustafa, you talked about intimidation, violence. You talked about harassment of voters and so on, and you're saying that there's not going to be a repeat of that. You have actually been quoted to have said or to have submitted on another platform, media platform, that the NDC in 2024 intends to go to the polling centers with your own, I can call it, weapons. First of all, did you say that? Can you confirm you did say that? What was the context, and what were you trying to communicate?
Thank you very much, Moro, that this came up. I never said that.
Okay.
I never intended that.
Okay.
What led to this discussion was because in Asenot, whilst we're in that election, Gabi Asare Ochredako and these same Apenyo Markins, who have become so recalcitrant politically, believe that they can walk into that election with military protection. This came at the back of the IGP's promise that the Asenot by-election was going to be lethal free. If you remember, all MPs, bodyguards, weapons were withdrawn because he says that the election was going to be free and fair and that it had to be lethal free. Woke up on the day of election and Gabi Asare Ochredako and Apenyo Markins walked into election polling stations with military officers armed with a rifle. Having that, and I have the evidence, that's one side. At this assembly election, Apenyo Markins didn't have a right, he didn't have any authority to be moving with a military officer or military officers with weapons and intimidating people in his constituency. And that was what exactly happened. Our Kumsi's incidents I have explained. So okay. I said that in that contest, if the IGP will not effect an arrest, said that people have become more powerful to commit security infractions in an election and go scot-free, what it means is that our polling stations will no longer be safe for you to go without protecting yourself. Only for Asasi Radio, the radio station owned by Gabi Asare Ochredako, to pick it afterwards, throw it to the MPP communication, and then this pollster, what is this? Ben Efson's paper, just picked it, dumped it on the paper, and of course, Daily Guide. So they had their own set of questions they've set for me and answered in their papers. I didn't say that, and I never said that. If you listen to the audio, you see it very clear that what happened was a twist of what I've said. They tried to draw or attract negativity towards me, but that will not cover the responsibility that 2024 election will be free and fair. NDC has a wound, and we have scars from the 2020 elections.
Okay.
And no single member of the NDC will sit down for anybody within this government to engage security forces outside the legal structures that we have to intimidate anybody, to harm anybody. Right. You heard the defense minister 2 days ago in his constituency assuring his people that he will deal with his own MPP member just as he will deal with the NDC. What does that mean? Right. Is it not a threat? And this is not a mean person. And he was being hailed behind as the commander, the lion of the army. If a defense minister says this, we don't have the right to defend ourselves. If you are in your house and a criminal comes to that house to come and rob you, you will go and take a Bible because Akufo-Addo is in power. You sat here and 8 people were killed needlessly, and you want a repetition of that? Hell no. No single individual, no single voter will be harmed in the 2024 election. Moro, this is the first time you will see that voters will bring their beds and mattresses and sleep at polling centers until their votes have been counted.
Interesting. Finally, before you go, and that's my final question to you, what's the situation where the running mate issue? Because some say it's taking a bit of time. Educate us on how the NDC usually goes about choosing its running mate. And, is it true that the party is divided as to whether to go with Professor Jane or not to go with Professor Jane? There are other names that have come up and so on. What's happening?
Let me first remark that the NDC can win the election on the strength of President Mahama alone, as we stand, and the party.
Right.
He can. And we are going to win the election. Now, with the issue of running mate, it is good that people are showing interest. And for me, it reflects how the party have grown to this end, that we have individuals who are capable of becoming presidents, vice president. So it means that any succession plan within the NDC is not a difficult task. Number 2, having shown an ambition, it is subjected to scrutiny and some sort of consultation. So the flag bearer who would have to look for a wife, and that wife is a running mate, that person is an individual who understands the president, that the president believes can help him champion his mandate as a president. The president believes that they are compatible enough to be able to deliver the promises that he makes to the nation. That this person is competent enough to stand in the gap for him anytime he's not around. So that becomes a sole responsibility of the president to do that, the flag bearer to do that. Now, the flag bearer will have to consult with the structures of the party, consult with interest groups to make sure that the same attraction that he has as a flag bearer is given to whoever is selected as a running mate. It goes through processes. And when that process is completed, one person will certainly be chosen. Now, Moro, the most important element of this discussion is that the entire party is willing to stand by the choice of the flag bearer. That is very important that we must drive home. That whoever emerge as the running mate, the party will support. At some instances, I wish that I could become the running mate as well. But there are people who feel that I'm too hot-headed for now. So I can't be a running mate. There are others who feel that they have the experience and requisite skill. There are others who are showing regional permutations. It is all subjected to some sort of discussion. And at the end of the day, someone will be chosen, not because that person is better than other people. But when you look at what pairs the president properly, then you can say that a vice president or a running mate have been chosen. So soon,
Wonderful.
I think next quarter, the flag bearer will be naming.
We should be looking at before June.
For June, he will be
year.
naming his running mate.
Okay.
I hope.
Okay.
Then we will be gone with this discussion. But I believe that, look.
But is there pressure? You
there's
personally, you're getting
there's no
you're getting calls?
There's no pressure.
Okay.
My responsibility as a deputy general secretary, and I suppose my boss is doing same, is to move the party into victory.
Okay.
And that is what exactly we are doing.
Thank you very much, Mustafa Gbande, for joining us. It's been wonderful talking to you. And, I wish you the best of luck. You've been working very hard, to be honest. And, I hope that the party folks can actually see and attest to that.
Well, they don't need to see.
Well, they have.
In my heart, I have to satisfy that I'm working hard first. And once I'm working hard, I think that they will definitely see. And I think that at the end of the day, when we win power, one, it's a just cause.
Right.
The country will be free.
Okay.
People will rest. Party people will be happy.
Okay.
And for me, I believe that is a cause that we must be pursuing.
Okay. All right. Mustafa, thank you so very much.
Thank you,
Have a
God
wonderful day. So Mustafa Gbande is the Deputy General Secretary of the NDC. He came through this morning to talk to us about some NDC matters. I hope you enjoyed it. Some of you have sent us tons of messages. We'll be reading that shortly. But before then, let me just say we'll take a break. When we come back, Professor Godfrey Bokwing from the University of Ghana Business School. He teaches finance and economics. He would be walking us through, well, we're going to look into 2024, crystal ball, find out how 2024, the economy is going to look like, because we ought to be able to plan our budgets, of course, for our personal selves and also for our businesses and so on. And also, for most of you, I'll be asking, Charlie, why ground hard like that? Why economy hard like that? Professor Bokwing will try and explain why things appear to be this tough and we're not seeing that sufficient liquidity circulating in the system. When we come back, he'll try and address all of that. He'll break it down for you to understand. I'll be right back.
John Mahama says he has a new idea. And what is the new idea? He says he wants a 24-hour economy. 24-hour economy. He doesn't even understand that policy. Today in Ghana, our hospitals work 24 hours. Our electricity company works 24 hours. Our water company works 24 hours. Our phone companies work 24 hours. Miniature bars work 24 hours. Isn't it? Today, because of digitalization, the banks, you can transfer money 24 hours. You can receive money 24 hours. Isn't it? So he doesn't understand his own policy. It does not make sense. And I want you to vote in 2024, but I will bring a new vision. I will bring new policy. And we will transform this country. Mahama is the past. Dr. Bawumia is the future.
Hospitals are open for 24 hours. You can buy electricity 24 hours.
You would recall that right from the beginning of this year, government has been updating the country on some key economic matters. You recall in April, or just at the end of March, when Cabinet held its first quarter retreat, I updated you all on the kind of economic pressures that we were of the view was going to befall us because of what was going on, and some of the measures that the government was introducing right at that time to help containment. That's where we introduced the cuts to budget and a few other measures as addressed by the finance minister. At the end of the second quarter, when Cabinet held its retreat and the President had the opportunity to see the numbers again, you recall the President instructed that we start negotiations with the International Monetary Fund. And so the statement was released on, I think, the 1st of July, just after the second quarter retreat. Since then, there have been a lot of engagements with the fund, and a number of statements have been released to update the Ghanaian public on how that is going, and it's going pretty well. This week, as we are coming to the end of the third quarter period, going into the final quarter fully, tomorrow morning, for example, the Central Bank, the Bank of Ghana, will be meeting the managing directors of some of the banks, and the heads of, I think, the Forex Bureau associations for a series of discussions aimed at ensuring that the supply of Forex onto the Forex markets is stabilized and the overpricing is also halted, and that people who need access to Forex for legitimate transactions can get same without hindrance in the banking halls and at the Forex bureaus, as against on the black market or using some rates coming from some other quarters.
In the case of Ghana, at the time of independence, we were the leading exporter of cocoa, producer and exporter of cocoa. And an economy that was structured around the production and export of primary products and commodities. All of us know that within the global value chain, raw materials occupy the lowest rung of the value chain. We want to live in an economy, independent in an economy where the products that you deal with are at the higher level of the value chain. So the structure of the economy that we inherited at independence, changing it, transforming it and trying to bring higher value-added activity to the system has been the great challenge facing all the governments of Ghana.
Ketu North has a lot of potential. And anytime NDC has been in office, we have never abandoned you. We've always made sure you get your fair share of the national cake. And so you can be confident that in the next coming of the NDC, whatever is being shared, Ketu North will get its fair share of it. But as I said this morning, we're going to go just beyond infrastructure. We're going to focus on economic transformation this time. We're going to put our investments where our people can make money and put money in their pockets. And so for every constituency, we're going to look at what your economic comparative advantages are. And we will put those investments in so that you can add value to the things you're producing and be able to make money for yourselves.
I have had a swimming school. I've been teaching as a swimming instructor for 7 years, okay? And then I've been working as a social media influencer on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, you name it. And in addition to that, I've been practicing for law. I've been studying for the law to eventually make money in that area. And finally, I've been basically working on my YouTube career as well. How many sources of income did I mention? 4. And I take the trotro every day because I can't afford anything. Are you saying Uber, please? Let's be serious. I saw a tweet that says the politicians probably like their belly full. I do 010 or 001. Do you know what that means? No eating breakfast, no eating lunch. You just eat supper. I'm not even hands to my chest. I say this on my YouTube. I'm very honest. I don't lie. I struggle to even take the trotro sometimes. I'm telling you facts that happen to me. Someone who has 4 sources of income. How? Unless the government is not working. I used to have a car. I used to drive. My brothers and sisters, I used to drive. Right now, for me to be able to afford that car, I just parked there. My dad sold it off. I can't afford this.
But I'm sure there's quite a number of you who can actually share in his sentiments that the economy is quite tight. People's disposable incomes have been affected and so on and so forth. But how did we get here and what should we expect in 2024? Whether things are going to get better or things are going to get worse? We need to know so we know how to plan. If you're earning 1,000 Ghana cedis, you may want to sit down and look at how to restructure your expenditure based on what Professor Boakping is going to tell us. And also, Nana Amoasi is also the man who's going to be walking us through the power sector challenges that we have. He's the executive director of the Institute of Energy Security. Is Nana Amoasi the 7th. He's a chief too, so you can expect some more wisdom in his analysis of the power sector. We give a lot of wisdom to our chiefs, don't we? Anyway, so let me start with Professor Boakping, and also welcome Nana Amoasi the 7th. The two of you via Zoom have joined Inside Page this morning. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us on Inside Pages.
Yes, good morning. And good morning to our cherished listeners and viewers. Happy New Year.
Well, Happy New Year, Professor Boakwin. It's always a pleasure having you on Inside Pages. A lot of people appreciate your depth of wisdom and knowledge as far as finance and economic issues are concerned. And that's why sometimes the media like to bore you quite a bit. But please bear with us. And also, Nana Mwesi the 7th. I know you're also there. You've joined us via Zoom. It's good to see you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Moro, to Prof, and to your viewers.
Right. Thank you so very great. So I'll start with Professor Boakwin. Now, Professor Boakwin, when an ordinary Ghanaian appears before you, or you run an ordinary Ghanaian runs into Prof and says, Prof, why is the system so tight? And how did we get here? I'm struggling to make ends meet. What would you tell that person, that ordinary Ghanaian who approaches you and tells you that?
Well, that's a difficult question, right? Because we find ourselves in the situation where you don't need to be an economist to understand the impact of the economy on individuals, households, and businesses, right? We have gone through a very difficult period, actually exiting COVID-19 towards the end of 2020 because it was an election year. Then 2021 thereabout. So it's been quite difficult, but the vulnerabilities were there. Okay, the vulnerabilities were there even before COVID. It's just that we didn't pay attention to those vulnerabilities. And when I say we didn't pay attention, we just gloss over them, thinking that some way, somehow, not through our own decisive actions, things will just suddenly turn out for our good. And obviously, that will be as difficult as asking fish to climb a tree, right? So to the ordinary Ghanaian, I would say I sympathize with them. We are all in this together, but it is also not a case that things are going to improve considerably in the next couple of years. It's also important that Ghanaians understand that. Is that okay? So if you were tightening your belt before, this is not the time to remove the belt at all because we have the economy at different levels. The state, as we speak right now, is not comfortable. The state is not at rest. So if the state is not asleep, the citizens can't sleep either. The state has messed up its balance sheet. Let's put it that way. So when we say the state has messed up its balance sheet through internal economic mismanagement, we can say that without any apology, because that is what we have done to ourselves. And then, so when we talk about pre-existing vulnerabilities, it's more self-inflicted, let's put it that way, and then aided by external shocks. We don't have control over those shocks like COVID, Russia, Ukraine, and the rest of them. We've had many of them since independence, and we have been quite vulnerable to almost all of this. In the state's attempt to repair its balance sheet, in other words, in the state's attempt to reset, that is coming at the expense of the citizens, the ordinary Ghanaian you are talking about. Is coming at the expense of businesses. Ordinarily, one would assume that the state exists for the citizens and businesses. The state's primary objective is to create the enabling environment for the citizens and businesses to grow, to thrive. In that process, the state is also rewarded, of course. But it's the opposite we are going through right now, right? So just to give you a little bit of background, from 2020, because it was also an election year, we messed up the fiscal space. We overspent, I think primarily with the election in mind, but then we blame it on COVID also. So if you look at 2020 fiscal deficit, In other words, the extent to which our projected expenditure exceeded our projected revenue, it was one of the highest in Africa, probably the highest relative to the size of our economy. Maybe probably Zambia came second. No wonder these two countries have been knocking on the doors of creditors, right, and some other countries. So we couldn't recover. Then we have Russia, Ukraine, and then all of that. Then we went to IMF. We went to IMF because we wanted macroeconomic stability. Bro, it's quite obvious that when you mismanage your economy, also aided by external shocks, is very costly. It's very costly. I'm putting it in some ordinary way so that we all can associate with it.
Right.
It's very costly trying to correct that distortion. It's very expensive. It's very expensive. Trying to restore macroeconomic stability is going to be costly. It has been costly, and it will still be costly for the next 2-3 years. Let me put it that way. Because even though we have seen some stability, we are not out of the woods, right? There are still difficult paths ahead of us to navigate our way through. That is how we put it. What is the cost? And that is what probably the ordinary Ghanaian is bearing now. What is the cost? The cost is coming from different angles. In economics, we could say the adverse distributional effects, but let's calm down. So the state, in trying to balance its books, is looking at taxes. The state, one basic function of the state is to collect taxes. It does that efficiently and effectively, and manages that effectively and efficiently. The redistribution of that wealth should benefit Ghanaians, ordinary Ghanaians, business, and the rest of them. So from 2021, actually, we have gone through different kinds of taxes. As though we were not paying enough taxes before. We were. We had been complaining about our tax structure and the rest of it even before COVID came. But you look at Ghana relative to other African countries, either regional peers, structural peers, or our aspirational peers. Since COVID, Ghana has introduced quite draconian tax measures than probably any of these countries. Than any of them. The fact is clear. Okay, over 15 different tax measures, including new taxes or new tax handles, and the rest have been introduced. In that same small economy, this same small economy, Ghana has over 27 different tax heads or tax handles. This small economy, right? So all that, because the state is inefficient, corruption and all of that, we are at a point where the taxes we have been collecting over the years have been proven not to be enough. And it's simply because you have the government that since 1992 keeps expanding, and yet is inefficient, keeps expanding. You can check since 1992, you can check the growth in government size and quasi-government institutions. You can check the growth. If you compare that to the growth in businesses, private sector, and household income, you can see the disproportionate relationship. So what that tells you is that the state run by the government that is largely inefficient keeps expanding. Now, how does the state pay for such inefficiency? They look to the citizens and businesses. Taxes, 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 taxes. Now, if you run an inefficient public sector latent with corruption represent costs to households and private sector as they interact with government or public sector institutions. And all of this put together contribute to the high productive cost base of doing business in this country that makes businesses largely unproductive, uncompetitive. That's the fact. Then you can look at how this mismanagement is manifesting. Higher prices, inflation. Okay, 2022 probably looks like a year we should not remember. It was that tough. We ended 2022 with inflation of 54.1%, almost galloping inflation. What that does is that it erodes the purchasing power of the ordinary Ghanaian. And we are talking about inflation of 54.1% 2022. Now 2023, we ended the year 23%. Yes, quite better than 2022, but it's still very high. So in a country where income levels are very low, to see prices rising at that level typifies what the ordinary Ghanaian has had to go through in the last 2.5 years. And that's very unbearable. Why is that so important? And Moro, that's where your question comes from. And I think one of the video or so that you played, somebody was talking about eating once a day.
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, somebody was talking about eating once a day.
Yeah.
That is real. I can identify with that. Not that that is what I am rehearsing at home, but I have interacted with people who eat once a day. People where 3 square meals a day looks like theoretical exposition. It's not something they are able to practice. That's real. But look at the more significant issue. You know, when you look at data from Ghana Statistical Service, from the household expenditure survey, food is what constitutes the biggest expenditure item at the household level, including you, including myself, all of us. So food alone takes between 42 and 44% of household expenditure. Food alone. Now, in a country where income levels are very low, when you find that food inflation keeps rising at the level we saw towards the end of 2021 through 2022 and 2023, it tells you that the ordinary Ghanaian had been exposed too much. The vulnerability of the ordinary Ghanaian probably is beyond measure. So when I hear those complaints, they are not faking it. It's real. It's real. Okay? You know, for so many things, through planning, you can manage it. You know, you can defer marriage. You can disengage even after engagement because things are not the way you expected. You can postpone childbirth through family planning. But how long can you defer hunger? Okay? And on daily basis, this is what a lot of Ghanaians are going through. People go to bed in their large numbers, not being sure where their next meal will come from. Can you imagine dealing with that uncertainty on daily basis or for 12 months across 2022, for another 12 months across 2023? That's too much of asking from the ordinary Ghanaian. That's too much. And that is why, Boro, one needs to be very careful when we have to celebrate the progress we have made and claim that the inflation of 2022 was just a blip. It tells us that we are not identifying with the ordinary Ghanaian. There's a large disconnect between the haves and the have-nots. And the haves have no link with the have-nots. Our economy exists at different levels. And probably there's no interaction between the economy of the privileged few at the top and then the economy of the majority, the less privileged at the bottom, and I think that is not fair enough. Okay, and we need to look at that. So those are the dynamics. Tomorrow, the issue we need to appreciate is that though global shocks tend to affect every country, the vulnerability or the resilience of individual countries will show how their citizens will be affected by those common factors. And in the case of Ghana, because we had pre-existing vulnerabilities, we were impacted much more than Ghana's regional peers or structural peers or our aspirational peers. Let's put that way. Of course, every country is going through one form of challenge or the other. So those are the dynamics. So there are still, so these are price that we have to pay. Then we are not done yet. Look at it from the end of 2021, the layers of taxes Ghana has introduced. From this, and essentially from the same tax-paying population, largely. From the same tax-paying population. The faithful few. We are just burdening the faithful few. The other thing we need to also bear in mind is that when things are well, they occur at different levels. The levers are not the same. So even the middle class that acted as cushion to the less privileged have been impacted seriously, for which reason individuals' own corporate social responsibility and the rest of them have gone down significantly. The extent to which people who easily help people here and there have equally been impacted. You know, we are like Liverpool, right, as a country. They're citizens. You never sleep alone. You don't eat alone. You don't work alone, right? So your salary is not for you alone. There are so many people who have equally made plans against your own predictable cash flows, which have equally been affected by inflation and the rest of them. So, I mean, it hasn't been easy, or it has been an enduring one, coming through 2022 and then through 2023. Of course, government made the right decision by reaching out to the IMF, even though they did so quite lately and reluctantly, I believe. The lack of proactiveness, and I say lack of proactiveness on the part of government in recognizing the danger and the difficulty that was coming, for me, is shocking.
Right.
I say it's shocking because from the third quarter of 2021, the signs were clear that Ghana was heading dangerously. And I believe that what was needful on the part of leadership was to have recognized those dangers much earlier and taken the necessary proactive measures. I know that some measures were put in place in terms of government-owned homegrown policies, including some expenditure cuts, and then the introduction of e-levy, but I felt that that was poorly conceptualized. I'm saying that if you had followed the data and you could predict the trend, what was coming, then you needed to decide the adequacy of your response to that situation. And I believe that government response in the 2022 budget was woefully inadequate, and we lost it. And on that slippery road, they had become very costly trying to restore. Right. And that was what occasioned the debt restructuring that we've gone through. Debt restructuring was clearly avoidable. If government had acted proactively at the right time, if they had taken the optimal decision at the right time, domestic debt restructuring was avoidable. But the signs were quite clear. From the second quarter of 2021 through to third quarter of 2021, it was quite clear. Look, we exited COVID, right? Almost having similar economic fundamentals like Kenya. Okay? The difference between Kenya in 2022 and Ghana in 2022 was that Kenya proactively reached out to the IMF much earlier than Ghana did. Ghana chose political pride over the common good, right? And that became very costly for all of us. Now, Moro, for the other Ghanaian, what we need to just understand is that the Ghana of old is different from Ghana of today. The traditional fiscal consolidation measures that we had deployed since 1992 in correcting economic distortions, aided by our usual political business cycle through almost all the competitive elections, and then external shocks, commodity shocks, because we are quite susceptible to those shocks, it's no longer enough. This is what we are saying, that you had a certain chronic disease. There was a certain medicine that had always been prescribed. And by taking that medicine, you were largely okay. Now your doctor tells you that your condition has moved to the next stage, such that the prescription you were taking before will no longer be enough. We need to step up. That is where Ghana is now. The traditional fiscal consolidation measures that we had used, made up of revenue enhancement, expenditure restraint, the combination, the pace either front-loaded or the normal one, had been determined not to be enough in our latest IMF engagement. I'm telling you this so that you understand where Ghana finds itself, so that if we are talking about recovery and when it will be well with the ordinary Ghanaian, it gives you an idea of the journey ahead. And I think that what we can tell ourselves now is that we have a long way to go.
Okay.
So we need to be patient. And whilst we are patient, it means that government then must do the right thing and do so consistently. Okay, and I'm sure my good friend on this panel will talk about the energy side.
Yes,
okay?
we'll get there.
The energy. Yes, so look at it this way. Energy plays a very key role to the whole economic dynamics.
True.
So, and there's no rest in the energy sector. How do you expect rest to businesses that rely on energy? Okay, and the rest of them. And your Happy New Year message from the government was a VAT on electricity consumption above a certain threshold. That's how the government wants to wish you well in 2024. Okay, bear that in mind.
Right. And apparently,
bear that in mind. If somebody is wishing you Happy New Year with that message, that tells you where we find ourselves, right? And the difficult part ahead of us that we have to navigate. So fiscal consolidation no longer enough. Now we are doing debt restructuring. We've done that in the past, but largely external debt. But now we have had to restructure our domestic debt. Okay, and in so doing, we have tampered with the financial stability and resilience of our financial sector that we had built on the back of the expensive financial sector cleanup that we did from 2017 through 2018, 2019. So across the broad sectors of our economy, either the finance subsectors, the real sector, and all of that, you can see that vulnerabilities exist. Even though we are talking about relative stability recovery, you can still see vulnerabilities persist. You can judge that also from the composite index of economic activity from Bank of Ghana, right, which is still contracting. The only good news we can take from that is that it's contracting at a much lower pace now than before.
Okay.
Great. But you can see economic activity from the ports that haven't picked up significantly. You can see cement sales that haven't picked up significantly. And that tells you that the construction subsector of the economy, that is also labor intensive, is not picking up. So once that is not picking up, the construction subsector is not doing well, people are not building. If people were building, they will certainly be buying cement. So we use cement demand or sale as a testament of economic activity or resilience, unless the evidence now is that people are now building without cement and iron rods. I would doubt what they will be building then, right? So what it means that once that subsector is not doing well, the majority of Ghanaians who derive their livelihood from that sector really haven't seen any turnaround.
Right.
Okay. And there are other indicators that you can even use vehicle registration data from DVLE and the rest of them and check whether cumulatively over the 4 quarters of 2023, 2024, whether we saw significant pickup from that side and the rest of them. Of course, in terms of other related indicators, we've seen some recovery signs and the rest of them. So yes, we can cherish this.
Okay.
Because it had been a difficult 2022. And therefore, when we see these signs towards the end of 2023, we can say that, yes, we've made some progress, but there's a lot remains to be done. I think that is more important. Then also, we should bear in mind that the progress that we are seeing, that probably some people are taking the credit and having a cocktail over that, is actually coming at the back of the price that ordinary Ghanaians and businesses have had to pay since COVID-19. Prices in terms of higher taxes. Higher taxes. Okay. You just go to the shop and buy something today, and when you check your receipts, VATs and VAT-related taxes alone take more space than actually the items that you bought. It's as though you went there to actually go and buy taxes. Right.
Interesting.
That is what Ghanaians have to go through.
Yeah.
We've introduced, look at the income tax, increase the higher income tax bracket to 35%. Maybe with that you want to make it more progressive. But if you account for all the taxes that the middle class pays, it's more than 60% effectively. Now, if the state takes that much from the citizens, ordinarily there will not be a complaint if that state is efficient in the delivery of public services. If the state is efficient in the delivery of public services in terms of spending on education, there's quality and quantity assured, the infrastructure and the rest of them, health, okay, all of that have been done efficiently, provision of public services, and the state is collecting that much from you and I, ordinarily, it may turn out to be a positive sum game, right? But that is not the case in Ghana. That is where the worry is. The state collects so much from the faithful few, and the state is largely inefficient. Okay. And you look at our health sector. If we are not careful with the exodus, a time will come, you have to go to the hospital with your own doctor. Otherwise, you go there will be nobody there to attend to you. Look at the queues at our hospitals.
Right, Prof, I'll come back to you because we need you to explain to us this. You think about inflation generally, headline inflation. We can look at a subsect, we can look at food inflation, etc. And the theory of marginality and relativity. And this is because you and I have had this off the air conversation where people say, why is it inflation is coming down, but the rate at which food prices are going up where I live is so high. So then there's a bit of a disconnect between what they hear the government say and what they're actually experiencing in their daily lives. I'll need you to please explain that to us. But let me come to Nana Moise the 7th. Nana, thank you very much for hanging in there. I know you had other things to take care of, but I wanted Prof to finish with the submission, and then I can come to you. Nana, can I please? Is Nana there? Is Nana Moise there?
Yes, Moro.
Well, thank you.
I'm here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so very much for your patience. I know you had other things to take care of, but you had to actually hang in there so you can join this conversation. Thank you so very much, Nana. So, the power sector, the energy sector, where do things stand as we speak? What's the health of our power sector? We don't want the recent crisis that we've had to face to become a yardstick for mere mortals like us to determine whether the health sector is sick or it is not. You work in that space. This is what you do for a living. Tell us, is the health sector in proper shape? Where are we? What's the status of our health sector? Sorry, power sector. Sorry.
Let's start this way. Let's try and understand how the sector works and the value chain that we have in there. And so you have somebody who have installed capacity, and that's at the generating plants. Somebody needs to feed that plant with fuel. And when we talk of fuel, we can mention the likes of light crude oil, heavy oil. We can also mention natural gas. Then, of course, we also count the water in the reservoir of Akosombo, Pong, and we as fuel, because that is what is used to run those turbines. Then, of course, after the generation of power, somebody will have to transmit that power to a distributor, and that person is GRIDCO. It comes to a distributor, and our main distributor in the sector is ECG. We have also the NETCO, but then ECG takes the bulk of our power generated. And so ECG must also work effectively to bring that power received from the transmitter to our homes and businesses. Because the ECG finds itself at the tail end of this value chain, after the power has been given to us, ECG must collect the money and recover all the costs incurred in the supply of fuel, the generation of the power, also the transmission, including its own distribution, activity. That cost must be recovered, and so it must be recovered within the tariff that we have to pay. Unfortunately, the key player that we so much depend on as ECG and all the utilities rely on for their own financial stability and operational efficiency loses almost 30% of the power given to them to distribute. And it's either through a commercial reason or through technical, challenges, they lose power. And it means that if you give them about 1,000 megawatts at a cost of 1 million Ghana cedis, they won't be able to account for 30% of this, roughly 30% of this. And so it means that day in, day out, what we receive as revenue from the sector is far lower than the cost incurred in the sector. And so that gap you see there creates a financial challenge for all the sector players. That's why at one moment you hear generators or IPP say, pay us what is due us or we shut down. We've been threatened severally. And we also get the indication from even a transmitter of this natural gas fuel to the power plant, which I forgot to bring in the equation, WAPCO, also threatened frequently and, compel us to go into doomsday because they are unwilling to move the natural gas. And so you can't say that the health sector is healthy to the extent that there are financial constraints and financial challenges that impact on the so much desired, reliable, consistent supply of power. And so the power sector is not in a good condition.
Now, the recent power outages that we have been suffering, and I'm sure today, if you go to certain areas, they're still facing the same problem. How did it come about? And is that a sign that we're in for some serious crisis, or this is something that we can easily nip in the bud?
Well, of course, at this moment, to the extent that we have financial challenge in the power sector, we must begin to tackle all the issues around this with the mind that we are in crisis. I am in my village at Ekumfi, Abor. We are having our funeral, major funerals. Every household has to go and rent, a power plant as a standby, because the assurance that we'll have power during the day, it's not there. Yesterday, we experienced same. we pray that today we must have power so we can reserve and probably keep our money and not incur more cost. But then what's really occurred over the last few days? Now, at Tuabo, today we have almost all the power plants, and when I say power plants, I mean the thermal ones, relying on natural gas. At Tuabo, process the natural gas, move it from Atuabo all the way to the Abuadi Enclave, the Western Corridor. That pipeline is operated by GNPC, owned by GNPC. So we are safe. Now, when it terminates at the Atuabo Enclave, the excess gas must be moved from the Western Corridor to the Eastern Corridor, and that's the Tema Enclave. That pipeline that connects the Atuabo to the Tema Enclave is owned and operated by WAPCO. So there's West Africa Gas Pipeline and the operator being the WAPCO of the same line. And so they are moving the natural gas from the Western Corridor to the Eastern on the, instruction of GNPC, the owner of the commodity, the natural gas. As we speak today, GNPC owes, WAPCO in excess of $15 million. We're getting the indication that some intervention has been made, but if I was going to, if we relate to the last 4 days, we owe them more than $24 million. It's a debt that keep on mounting. And the guys will come and say, please pay us because our debts are going up. We can't be sure what tomorrow will be like. Get us our money. GNPC and ECG, that's our government institution that must cooperate to respond to them, sometimes responds late. And the company is compelled to shut down the valve. It means that gas flow is restricted from the Western Corridor to the Eastern Corridor, compelling all the power plants in the Tema Enclave or the Eastern Corridor to shut down, except for, Asogli, that was fortunate to receive some natural gas flow from Nigeria. And even Asogli, that is in position to generate about 550 megawatts, was compelled to generate something around 200 megawatts because the gas flow from Nigeria too was not enough. And so what happened was a restriction of a natural gas flow to the power plants to make them work effectively because government owes somebody. And the person is bent on collecting the money by taking up that step of shutting down a valve.
Wow, that's serious. The government says it's settled. It's reached some agreement with most of the IPPs. It's settled almost all the debts. There's only, I think, 2 IPPs or so the government says it's still negotiating with. But let's move away from that because for now it appears that the situation has improved. And so really you won't say that there's any serious cause for alarm until government is unable to prove beyond reasonable doubt that he can pay. I think is that what it is, Nana?
That's what we can assume.
Okay.
But that may not be the situation.
Sure. All right. Let's do this. Let's just quickly, before you take leave of us, this new 15% or so VAT, which has been slapped on residential consumers, help us understand how this is going to affect us. We're told minus those who consume, minus Lifeline consumers. And even the Lifeline consumers, we're told, is now being moved from 50 kilowatts per hour to now 30. Put all of this together and help us understand how this is going to affect us. I mean, say if I was buying 1,000 Ghana cedis a month, what should I be looking at?
Well, you should be looking at paying more for
electricity.
Electricity that's consumed per every kilowatt of power that you consume. You must pay more compared to your initial or previous position. And so when government levies electricity as a commodity, then it is choosing to increase the tariff for consumers. And so basically, we have to pay more for electricity that we consume. And we find it at IES as retrogressive. And in fact, it will come back to hurt the same sector that government believe that I need to raise revenue for through taxation. It may come to hurt it. because when people find it difficult to pay the bills, they may be looking for bypasses. And that's where you can have thefts increasing, even with the collision, in collision with the ECG staff, as we have come to know. That is one. And so when people steal power, your expected revenue is reduced. The next is that when I find it difficult to pay the tariff,
Well, I hope that it looks like we have a connection.
And
challenge.
I see that, look, I'm more sorry.
Yeah, please go ahead. Please go ahead, sir.
I'm going to do this work. I need more than 1,000 kilowatts hour of power to do. It's going to cost me
we seem to have
maybe 1 million. I compare it to using a standby generator. I will really fall on a standby generator and depart from the grid, the government produced power.
Well, we seem to have a challenge with the connection to Nanamwe the 7th. I was so sorry about that. We'll come back to Professor Boakwin to wrap up.
So you have...
Okay. All right. Well, so sorry about that. These things happen sometimes. Let me just do some text messages just quickly before I bring in Professor Boakwin to wrap up. It's about we're 5 more minutes to leave here. So this one said, good morning, great discussions, Mr. Morado and your resource persons. All I can say is that times are hard and the government must sit up because we really can't deal with this economic hardship we've never seen before. That's coming from Nanaye Champo in Koforidia. Mr. Moro, it beats my mind why our leaders avoid good brains like Professor Boakwin, Joe Jackson, and the likes for advice and rely on their party economic mediocre. What was that? Okay. Okay, so mediocre brains or something like that. To bring the country to where we are now. I believe strongly some people must pay dearly for this. I'm Padnabulat. God bless Ghana. Some from Hachu. It's quite a number of messages. Let's wrap up with Professor Boakwin. Professor Boakwin, we have just 5 minutes to leave here, but help us understand the issues about inflation and how people say, well, I live here, but inflation is this, is high where I am, and so on. Just briefly on that. And then finally, we're told to be, to say hooray because we've reached an agreement with our official bilateral creditors, mainly China and France. And what does that mean for the 600 million that we're expecting from the IMF? Is it coming, and how soon? So this two in one, if you can do it in 5 minutes, I'll be very happy, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Usually when we talk about inflation, what we report, usually in the media, is the headline inflation and is the average.
Okay.
Right? But inflation varies from region to region, from district to district. Again, inflation varies from individual to individual. So you may find the same Ghanaians complaining, but they carry different inflation rate because their consumption basket is different.
True.
Okay, so that is how we see inflation. So even though we are talking about the fact that food inflation has come down, Moro, because food takes a larger share of household expenditure, look at what is happening with food inflation. Food inflation is more than 27%, even though the average inflation is 23.2% December 2023. Okay, so you can see that food inflation is still very high. That is not the only thing. Moro, just look at the variation of food inflation across regions. In the eastern region of Ghana, food inflation is 51.3%. So you see the people in the eastern region haven't turned a corner when it comes to food inflation, right? Food inflation, eastern region, 51.3%. Food inflation, northern region, 36.6%. Upper West, 36.6%. Western North, 35%. So you can see marginality. You can see differences from region, depending on where you live, where you eat from. Prices could be higher relative to other places. But overall, food inflation is still very high. But if you look at the disaggregation, that's where my interest is. If you look at food items that should promote health, it's more expensive. And I think government needs to take another look. This requires targeted policies. When it comes to vegetables, tubers, plantains, cooking bananas, and the rest of them, the price is very high. is very, very high. Then again, when it comes to other items, so those differences still exist. So some level of inclusivity is lacking in here in the economic recovery. Regional disaggregation shows wide marginality, and that needs to be looked at going forward. Again, back to the bigger issue. I'll say it's the bigger issue because the whole IMF supported program is conditional on how well we perform with our external debt restructuring, which is quite key. At least the good news is that we have scaled an important war, which is securing the agreement from the Official Creditor Committee, which has been a condition precedent to we getting board approval for our first review of the IMF-supported program. And now that we have secured that, the IMF itself has tweeted that they are happy with that, which means that in the next couple of weeks, probably next week, the board will be meeting. It's a working board, right? So the board will be meeting to approve that. But remember, that unlocks $600 million. Of course, we can also unlock some inflows from the World Bank and then other development partners, but that is not significant, right? Between now and 2026, we still have a lot of grounds that we have to cover. And that is not to also suggest that the $600 million is what will actually cause some magic in our economy overall. Remember, in the time past, we've been borrowing $3 billion from the Eurobond, and we didn't really have much to show for and all of that. But at least it represents good news because a significant headwind has been lifted in terms of we making progress with the IMF-supported program. The good news also is that once we scale that war, it also boosts confidence in our economy in terms of investors and the rest of them. But we need to balance all of this within the risk of the 2024 elections. And I believe that that is where some Ghanaians may get some relief because in an election year, politicians spend. And in that spending, that injection of liquidity, some can benefit ordinary Ghanaians whose livelihood are keenly indexed to political activities and the rest of them. Some follow, they get hampers, some get food and all of that. The rental industry, the hospitality industry, the tourism industry, likely to receive some kind of good patronage in an election year and all of that. But overall, the advice would be that we would encourage the government not to sacrifice the limited gains, progress that we have made under the IMF program for the 2024 election. Right. Government must preserve fiscal space and learn more towards fiscal discipline so that the limited gains we have made, we're able to preserve it and build on that for the foreseeable future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Professor. Weekend. Thank you so very much, Professor Godfrey Boakpong, for joining us today on Inside Page. It's been wonderful talking to you. I also want to say a big thanks to Nanam Wesi, the seventh. Unfortunately, your submission had to end at some point due to the connection challenges. I also want to thank Mustafa Bandi for joining us, Deputy General Secretary of the NDC. My name is Aldumuro. Thanks to the team that made it possible, Michael and the rest of you, and also my man, what's the name again? Tornado. Yes, Tornado. The sound guy is here. Jesse is here. Evans and the MCR guys and my man called Azay. Jesse, the superstar, is also here. Alex, my man, he calls me King. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.